Haven't got to figure out what you're going to get. Last minute gift ideas. You know what's great for this is Captain Technology, the newest Marvel superhero. It's Ian Sherr. Ian Sherr's going, if I was making Marvel money, I wouldn't have to talk to you guys. Is Ian with us?
Yeah.
I'm here. I don't know if I have a theme song or a cape or anything yet. So I'm going to work on that.
We'll get you a cape. I'm not worried about that.
Tech guy. Tech guy. Who's the guy that always helped out James Bond and came up with the gadgets? Q? Okay. You're not Q. You are.
No, I'm S.
Yes,
sure.
You're
or
S.
I.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think I works. S is better.
Maybe the I, man. All right, hot tech Christmas gifts. Are we still wearing wearables? Is this our number one thing?
Well, I don't know if it's the number one thing, but it is definitely something that's popular still. In fact, wearables, if you add up the sales of those, they are outselling the entire Swiss watch industry.
Is that right?
So you do the math, I don't know. But what's interesting, of course, is that there are kind of two different groups of wearables, right? There's the Apple and then everybody else. And part of the reason for that is that Apple has been able to really make it so that these watches that they make are not only good at what they do, but also are so appealing that people have not really found value in a lot of the competitors, right? The only one that really has been able to make it anywhere is Fitbit. And part of the reason they succeed is because they are a fraction of the price, right? You can buy an Apple Watch starting at like $250, but you can buy a Fitbit tracker for as low as like $60. So that's part of why.
Also, isn't it true that Apple is proprietary in so many ways from, up until very recently where you had to have their charger and no, they didn't give it to you and you had to go get the actual charger and all that. And point being, if you've got an iPhone, can you go out and get a Samsung watch? Isn't there going to be a compatibility issue?
There will be a slight compatibility issue, right? Some of the features won't all work, but in fact, you can make it work for some of the very basic stuff if you want to. The truth is, though, that part of why a lot of reviewers don't recommend buying a lot of those other watches other than Fitbit is because the companies themselves are very bad at keeping the software up to date, right? Apple rolls out a new software update every year. They tend to support their devices back 5 years. And look, I'm not working for Apple here, right? I'm just talking about the facts. And oftentimes the struggle that Samsung and Google and a bunch of others have had is that they aren't able to put the resources toward making sure that they're upgrading it, offering new features, stuff like that. So it turns into one of those situations where, yeah, you could buy someone else's, or you could buy one that is going to be supported.
Ian, I need you in my pocket when I go to these stores to buy things that are technically advanced because I'm always never sure. I went to get a TV and I haven't bought a TV in a long time. And I saw this thing that said OLED. And then there was one that said QLED. And then I'm thinking, how about just a TV? And I don't understand the difference and why I need one over the other. Can you help us and tell me what direction do I go? And is it based on size or quality or what do I do?
Well, it depends on a lot of things, obviously, right? But part of it, you want to think of it in terms of good, better, best, right? Which is the way that any marketing professional loves you to think. So good is LED, right? And it stands for light emitting diode. It's essentially the technology that's used to brighten the screen, right? So that you see the image. And that is kind of a technology that came out first. OLED, which stands for organic light emitting diode, what it does is it actually takes the individual pixels, right? The little bits of color that are in the screen that if you took a microscope and you looked in, right, you would see these very small bits of color. They are actually able to light themselves. And so as a result, it gives you really great black levels. It gives you really good, just kind of the quality of the image is better. Now, is it going to matter if you just like to watch like standard TV? No, not really, right? But for people who are really into their visuals, right, or are loving to watch the nature channels or really into sci-fi, those people care. And then QLED is called Quantum Dot. Well, it's the most recent one that came out, and it does an even better job than OLED, right? So you end up paying relatively, right, for good, better, best. But most people are perfectly happy with an LED TV. That's what I've got. I've had it for years. And, does it look amazing as a QLED TV? Of course not. Is it enough for me to buy a new one? I haven't yet. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
It's a great way to look at it.
He's a tech guy.
And speaking of TVs, what about streaming boxes? Do we need them or just use our smart TV?
Well, it depends, right? If you hate your smart TV, which some people do, then you could buy a streaming box separately. And there are really 3 tracks you could go. You could go the Amazon route, which is nice and cheap, right? They start at $18. Wow. So you can't fight how cheap that is. Or you can go for the Apple route, which of course is way more expensive, right? It's over $130. Or you can choose to go with what's called Google TV, right? And these are, I recommend buying directly from Google, if you will, right? Not one of the random people on Amazon. And those essentially have a version of the phone software that is on a lot of those non-iPhones. And it actually is made for TV. So it runs a bunch of different apps, just like Apple's does. Amazon is kind of in the middle, right? So if you want to go for easy and cheap, Amazon's your answer. If you want to go for super high end, Apple's your answer. And if you want to go for something that's somewhere in between, Google is really good at that.
And gaming consoles for your punk kid who doesn't want to pay attention to you anyway?
It's so confusing. You lost me like 20 years ago.
The gaming consoles?
Yes,
it's
a lot
very
of us.
Confusing.
So 20 years ago, it's still the same players, thankfully. PlayStation, right, from Sony, Xbox from Microsoft, and Nintendo, which has a thing called the Switch at the moment. So generally speaking, most people see it as that the Switch is really good for kids, right? And I'm talking about up to like 12-ish. But also there are a lot of adults who love the Switch as well, right? If you're a big Mario fan or Zelda, you're going to love it. And then there's the Xbox and the PlayStation, which, kind of the really big difference between them, other than price, every once in a while, right? One's on sale, one isn't, but generally they're around the same place, is that they offer different games, right? So they have a lot of the same games, but then they make their own. So if you know of stuff like Halo, for example, that's an Xbox thing. You can't get that on PlayStation. Or if you know of God of War or The Last of Us TV show from HBO, that was originally a video game, that is on PlayStation. So that's where you have to make your choices. The one thing that you want to keep in mind is that, especially because there are now kind of enough of them out in the market, don't pay too much for it, right? They generally, you can find them for below retail price. And also, especially, they're selling a lot of bundles these days, right? So if you go to Costco or BJ's or something like that, you will find pretty good bundles where you'll get a game in the box along with the console and maybe even an extra controller if you've got multiple kids.
The portable charger world is another place where we spend a whole bunch of money and then we put them in a drawer and we can't find them and things.
Yes.
There's adapters in cars now that have multiple device capabilities, but it seems our phones are going to standard. Apple's given up on this. I got to sell you a different charger thing, it seems. So what do we need? What do we need for a charger?
Well, all you need to think about is the term USB-C. Right. So you've heard of USB before, right? That's been a technology that's been around for like 30 years. USB-C is this type of plug, and we've all seen it at this point, I think. It's an oval-shaped plug, and it is a standard now in the tech industry. It had become pretty much a standard before Apple jumped on as well. But what happened was the European Union said, you know what? It is ridiculous that people have to buy all these different chargers. And so they made it a law that within Europe, you cannot sell a device that doesn't work with USB-C. So Apple had to switch. So now we're all benefiting. So as long as you buy a device that says USB-C, you're good to go. And pretty much you can't find a charger that doesn't have that. A lot of them have the old A style USB-A plugs, which are those square plugs we're all used to from the past.
Yeah.
Some people still have those. You can buy a lot of chargers that have both. I recommend that generally, especially if you're throwing it in your bag, because you're always going to run across one point where you need the square one instead of the oval one. And that's where it's useful.
But you can get adapters too.
You can absolutely get adapters, and those work fine, right? I carry actually adapters that go from A to C and C to A to make life a little easier on myself. But it depends on what you're willing to carry around, right? That's one more extra thing you have to carry,
lose.
And it's annoying.
Ian Sherr contributing to CBS News, and everybody else that's smart enough to bring him in. We certainly hope he'll continue to contribute to us. I'm going to put you on the spot, but we'll do it off the air. I'm going to ask Tom to talk to you about something that is the coolest thing you've seen so far this year. A dirty little secret that we'll give to the listeners, like the coolest thing. So you want to buy something cool? Buy this. And thank you, Ian, as always. Where do we follow you on social?
Anywhere, pretty much. I'm under the same username, Ian Sherr, IANSHERR. Although I do have to admit, I'm not as active on X anymore because, well, we all know why.
Right, exactly. And well done. Ian Sherr.